Welcome to Protiviti's new podcast series, The Post-Quantum World. I'm your host, Konstantinos Karagiannis. I lead quantum computing services at Protiviti, where we're helping companies prepare for the benefits and threats of this exciting capability. Like the emergence of AI, machine learning, and other recent game-changing technologies, quantum capabilities are exploding, creating disruption and opportunity. I hope you'll join each episode as we explore the technology and business impacts of this post-quantum era. Do you doubt we're in the post-quantum era? Did you know there are over 24 real quantum computers in the cloud available to researchers, companies, and even students? And they're only getting better. Recent roadmaps show there will be machines of over 1,000 qubits by 2023. We could see threats to cryptography within just a couple years after that. This week, we'll start with the threat side. Bitcoin has been soaring in value, but is also based on ECC, which is known to be vulnerable to quantum computers. What would happen if 2,500 qubits came online? Is there a way to build a better altcoin? Our guest today is a director of outreach for the quantum resistant ledger, that's the QRL. And he also has a flair for fancy hats. So, hey, what's not to like about that? So welcome, Michael Strike.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I sometimes people like to focus more on the hats than the than the content, but I'll take what I can get.
Well, I shave my head, so in the winter they come in handy. So.
Remember that if you shaved it, then remember that's a style. That's not bald. That's a style.
Exactly. It's a decision. It's a choice. It's deterministic head shaving. Deterministic.
We've already gone off track.
Yeah. Well, sort of, and it's right back into quantum again somehow. So I guess to start off, why the QRL? Basically, we all know that there's a general threat to cryptocurrencies from quantum computing. So if you want to maybe talk a little bit about that and how it led to the creation of this project.
Sure. So the founder of our project is Dr. Peter Waterland. And I actually came across the project when I was coming to the same conclusions as Peter was. And I was considering looking into, hey, I wonder if I could maybe get some people together. And it's like, oh, just as whenever you have an idea and you start looking around for it, as usual, somebody's already done it or is doing it. So the idea here is that let me start off with since our project is cryptocurrency based, moving forward, a basic level understanding of Bitcoin will be helpful for your audiences. But the issue really comes around factorization. So in order to describe how this works, let's talk about a Bitcoin wallet for a moment. Does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
All right. So a Bitcoin wallet is essentially a 256-bit random string. That's all it is. 256 bits of ones and zeros. So that is the private key of a Bitcoin wallet. Now that this all goes back to asymmetric cryptography, which goes back obviously to like the 1970s. It's been around for a while. It's proven, it's considered to be very classically secure. So with that, when you create a wallet, you generate 256 random bits. With those 256 random bits, you apply what's called elliptical curve multiplication, and this is what's referred to as a one-way function, or you might hear someone call it a one-way gate, and then you arrive at the public key. So now that you have a public key, you have something that you could give someone. And this is the way Bitcoin operated in the early days. It was an address format in which it's called pay to public key. There's been some minor updates to the protocol since then. Now you can pay to public key hash. So most wallets nowadays will use the pay to public key hash, and the hash of your public key is what ends up on the chain. But here's the problem. When you sign a transaction on the Bitcoin network, in order to sign that, you have to present your public key to the node. So public keys were never really, because they were, classically secure, they were never really intended to be secret. So while the hash may end up written to the blockchain, you end up signing that transaction with your public key in order to show that you have the private key, in order to show that you have you are the rightful owner of the wallet. Now that brings up some interesting scenarios, like as we say in crypto, not your keys, not your keys, not your crypto. We also say not your node, not your rules. So what that means is any number of rogue nodes that potentially were, rogue classical nodes that were on the internet maybe attached to, it could be attached to a quantum computer. Instead of flooding that transaction to all other nodes, maybe it doesn't even try and process it or validate it, or it's not doing any mining. Maybe it just sends it to a quantum computer instead. And you're waiting for the transaction to go, and you're waiting and waiting and waiting for one confirmation, for one node to find a block and put your transaction in there, and you're waiting. But at the same time, this is potentially being worked on by, I'm sure you've probably heard of Mr. Peter Shor and his famous algorithm from 1994. And I understand there's also even some variants from that, variants of that algorithm. But essentially, this is what the threat is. It's not just a little. It's not like a small piece of the code in Bitcoin. It's the fundamental address structure is based on asymmetric encryption and elliptical curve cryptography. And there's really no easy way around this. And fundamentally, that's what the issue is.
Yeah, it could create the potential for like a fast enough attack, to access that information at that moment where it's being processed. Can a machine crack it then?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's say you were the only node to receive that transaction.
Mm-hmm.
Don't broadcast it to other nodes. Just run with it. You just send it over to your own quantum processor, and just work on it yourself. While the purported victim is waiting for the transaction to clear.
Yeah. Especially if it's a big transaction, then there's a big wallet.
Or you can just cherry pick the transactions. So,
yeah, I probably wouldn't attack a $5 one, but I would definitely. Yeah.
I've thought about this, and I've thought about this is one of different attack vectors. And if someone were to use this one, I think what they would do is cherry pick the right transactions to stay highly profitable, but not so much as to reveal what's actually happening. So if a bad actor on the network were doing this, you'd want to maximize profit while also maximizing camouflage, right? So there's this gray area in there, because you wouldn't want to collapse the value of you wouldn't want to collapse the value and confidence of the network of that which you're trying to accumulate.
Yeah, and ironically, there are quantum algorithms that do that help you figure out how to maximize something like an attack, or how to pack a box, basically. It's the same kind of problem to solve for. So it'd be fun to be a quantum computer figuring that out, and then another one doing the attack. Possibly.
Yeah, like you have potentially Grovers and Shores running at the same time or something like that.
Yeah, and of course, the big disaster would be if you made enough noise, it would become like a canary. And then anyone watching the blockchain would panic and say, wait, now there's a quantum computer of sufficient power happening, and Bitcoin is worth zero.
But so here's also the other thing. What about just the speculation of a false positive? Something strange happens. Something strange happens because people watch the Bitcoin blockchain like a hawk, right? And people are watching whale movement all the time, and they watch for strange transactions. I mean, what about, just a correlation of some interesting quantum news that comes out, because no quantum news doesn't come out very often. It's basically, to quote Nevin, doubly exponential as far as news that comes out, month after month and week after week, the news is going up. Maybe one of these correlates with a strange transaction, and somebody starts a GameStop Reddit storm. Who knows? I mean, it doesn't even have to necessarily be real, because anyone's perception is anyone's reality.
Yeah.
There's probably a quantum joke there somewhere on it.
Yeah, exactly. Some kind of many worlds joke we're not
That's
making.
exactly what I was going to say.
Because we see it all the time, right? If someone in one of the big financials says something negative about Bitcoin, there's an impact instantly. You know, it happened years ago with Jamie Dimon, right? He said something about Bitcoin, and boom, the price dropped temporarily, of course.
Yeah, he said it was like dog food squared or something like that. Rat poison squared, something like that.
Yeah.
And then, not that a central banker has ever, changed his mind on anything.
Yeah.
Then they started developing their own blockchain. Well, not ironically, I guess you could say in hindsight, it was inevitable to quote another famous person.
And that's interesting because that chain we're talking about, I guess, would be Quorum, and that ended up contributing a lot, sort of upstream to Ethereum. Over time, some advancements in how to handle transactions, I guess, with some kind of like secrecy. So eventually, we're going to want to talk a little bit about what we can learn from QRL to maybe potentially protect other chains. So with that, I guess maybe we could talk a little bit about why QRL is immune to this potential quantum threat.
Sure. So as we talked about earlier, Bitcoin based off prime number factorization, which is susceptible to shores. QRL works differently than that. We work off, instead of using elliptical curve digital signature algorithm, we use something called XMSS. And XMSS is a hash-based one-time signature scheme that's stateful in nature, and it uses hashes instead of elliptical curves in factorization. So the way it does this is it borrows a style from XMSS, borrows a style, which I may add was just actually, I think last 4 months ago, was added to NIST's and moved from draft recommended to recommended on NIST's post-quantum initiative site. And if you picture a Merkle tree, it just looks like an upside down tree, and each of the branches and leaves are basically a key pair. You have multiple multiple pairs of keys, and the way that this works is you when you sign a transaction, you use a key pair. So what I said when I meant that this was stateful is the XMSS doesn't work for all use cases. It only works for use cases where you're able to creating a message, in this case signing a transaction, in which you're able to keep track of the state. And blockchain makes a great use case for being able to track the state because of its immutability, right? And its distributed security model. So in short, instead of using elliptical curve, we use a hash-based signature scheme. You can actually, when you generate the wallet, you can select which hashing algorithm that you want to. I think the default is SHA-256. And SHA-256 is considered to be quantum resistant / secure, I suppose, depending on who you talk to. Finding the pre-image on something that's been SHA-256 is quite difficult.
Yeah, and that could be somewhat weakened by quantum computer, but not completely weakened. It could be made more like 128, right? If you were to.
Well, I mean, if you bring the bit, I don't know where that curve exactly lies, but apparently Grover's is one algorithm that can process the transaction. But if you look at how many ASICs, and I'd like perhaps even someone in your audience could chime in on this one that has a little bit more experience with the hashing and Grover's. But if you look at how powerful the ASICs are and how many gigawatts of power that those are driving, how strong that network is, I don't see being able to find a pre-image happening really anytime soon.
Yeah, I'd agree. And we would be able to say that if NIST decided that there was some kind of flaw, because I know, so now you're in round 3 basically, right, of their selection process. If they were to find a flaw, would you be able to make any like modifications?
Yes. So we within our protocol, we have different hashing based hashes that we can use, and we could port over to a different hashing algorithm. So that hashing algorithm is the fundamental component of the logic that lives within the Merkle tree. So the Merkle tree itself Merkle tree itself is kind of like the scaffolding, and the hashing algorithm is what type of algorithm that you're using in order to be quantum resistant. So there's actually there's 3 on the website, and I remember if you read the white paper, there's actually additional slots within the protocol where additional algorithms could be added.
Yeah, that's terrific, because whenever we talk to customers about post-quantum crypto, the word is agility, be crypto agile. And it wouldn't be great if the solutions weren't crypto agile too, just in case something happens in the future, of course.
Yeah, and like I said, when you create the wallet, you also have the ability to select different types of hashing algorithms.
Yep. That's a pretty good design. So people have a hard time figuring out when this real threat is going to hit. A lot of the math seems to indicate that the threat to Bitcoin could be as soon as when there's 2,500 quality logical qubits. And of course, logical means that there's a whole lot of physical qubits doing error correction and things to get to that 2,500 number. So IBM's already planning 1,000 logical qubits in 2 years. And that's a really big leap from where we are right now. So it makes me feel like it's not insane to think that Bitcoin's threatened as soon as 3 years from now. I mean, it's quite possible.
It's not insane to think. It's not insane to think that. And as I was saying before, even the potential threat, given the cryptocurrencies market cap. I don't know what was it. Just over $1 trillion now, right? Surpassing Visa and MasterCard put together. Obviously, there's other use cases as well too, as far as RSA and being able to decrypt, potentially decrypt communications, between countries. I've said this before, and I was a little hesitant initially, but I would not be surprised if the level of secrecy based on what is at stake in an information age when big data is everything, from corporations to government surveillance. It is not difficult for me to say that the secrecy behind quantum computing at the national level, that level of secrecy could be compared to possibly the Manhattan Project. And if you look at the National Quantum Initiative, which is the United States approach to quantum computing research, I'll read from their 2021 budget forecast right here. And they're putting 450 million QIS for research and development, and this was 2019. 450 million 2019, 580 million budget capital set aside in 2020, and for 2021, $710 million. Now I went onto the site and I was looking. Okay, this is really cool. Where's the updates on your progress? That's strange. I don't see anything. Okay, I want to make sure my tax dollars are being spent properly, but Freedom of Information Act might not apply here. Joking aside, I view this as kind of like an iceberg analogy. We see what comes out from Honeywell. We see what comes out from IonQ. We see what comes out from Google. We see what comes out from IBM, Intel. We see these progress, but to me this is a bit like an iceberg. We see what's on the top, what we're supposed to see. What's happening to this $1 trillion? And I'm just talking about one country here. What progress is being made there? That's happening in in an information vacuum. No physics joke intended. So
a very cold vacuum. I I've heard different variations on this. One, I can't say what company, but someone who works for a company working on quantum computers said that he wonders if they're going to be allowed to always say the progress they've made for fear of some like nation state actor literally coming and taking it. Just like marching in and taking something that they've developed because it's that good. Like if you made a breakthrough tomorrow and you did have, let's say, 2,500 great qubits humming along, that's worthy of stealing if it can be taken away.
2,500 logicals.
Yeah, logical. That would be
definitely
that would decimate Bitcoin. We would need, let's say, another 1,500 on top of that to do just general RSA, but then again, the advancement alone, you could learn a lot from stealing something like that. So it is possible that somewhere they've made some more progress that we haven't heard about. I think the first leak of how much money was being spent on this was part of all the Snowden leaks, right? Penetrating hard targets, I think it was called. It was something like $79 million being put aside for, I guess, work on a quantum computer. And this was a while back.
That was years ago.
Yeah, it was years and years ago. So I could see the numbers have ramped up significantly since then.
As have their security protocols probably on leaked information.
Yeah. Maybe they should have like true quantum files that when you look at them, they disappear. And then there's no chance of anything leaking at all.
Or quantum secure information, quantum secure internet, that's being heavily being worked on by China. There's just too much money being pumped into this to ignore. And I was just for giggles. The other day, I was when I was growing up as a kid, I loved computers, and I did a report on ENIAC, size of the building back 2000 vacuum tubes, whatever it was. And I just was going back and I was reading the news articles for ENIAC, and I just wanted to see how much they correlated between what we're saying about quantum computers now and what we're saying about the first classical vacuum tube machines. And it goes on about, and if you read the articles, it's going on about improvements in mathematics, industrial applications, and all these different areas. It didn't say molecular engineering or anything like that, but it read very similar. And I'm not saying, I probably won't say that history always repeats, but more often than not, it usually rhymes.
Yeah, I could see that. A lot of the promises were very similar, and there's all these parallels. And computing in general, let's face it, the first supercomputer, Colossus, was built to crack encryption, and that's the number one reason people were interested in quantum when they first started talking about it. I guess because of Shor's algorithm. Everyone got all excited about cracking encryption again. So we're right back where we started. We just have all these other use cases that we're looking at within the next couple of years.
And consider as well that when these early systems were being developed, there was communication, and you wanted to talk to someone, you picked up the phone and you could give them a call, right, in the 40s and 50s. Nowadays, information, moves and aggregates much faster. Collaboration has increased, has been increasing, exponentially. The ability to be able to talk to people and coordinate on other sides of the world, video and Zoom and all this. That by itself, I think, is going to, if you want to compare, some people would compare, current quantum computers to vacuum tube machines, right? I'd argue that that's not necessarily far off, that this is still in its infancy, but based on how we're able to collaborate and work more efficiently nowadays than compared to how we were able to work decades ago, I think that's going to end up being a big factor in progress moving forward.
Yeah. I don't think we're anywhere near that time scale away, right? Like, so that was 70 years ago. I don't believe that, we're 70 years away from making quantum this far. Yeah, I think it's going to be much sooner than anyone expected, especially with like IonQ. Their approach is going to be to essentially link these photonic machines together. And
they're merging and going public, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I guess other companies are going to do the same thing. So as that happens, there'll be investments. And do you think that QRL's value will kind of like march and pace with them? Because it makes sense, right? As people invest in quantum and believing in the threats to encryption, maybe they'll see something like QRL as more than a proof of concept of being secure.
So we live at it. Our project lives at a very interesting intersection. It's it's a niche within a niche.
Yeah, definitely.
First of all, we're blockchain. Okay, wait, we're what? And then we're quantum computing. Oh no. So I would say both influence right now. I would say the majority of it possibly is blockchain related, because the price does seem to fluctuate. Bitcoin's kind of something that provides buoyancy, positive or negative buoyancy, to all the other altcoins. And I do see that, in Bitcoin bull runs, QRL does go up. Now that could be that in retrospect, that could be because more the higher value of Bitcoin, more is at risk to the quantum threat, or Y2Q, Y2Q, as we like to call it on the team. So I think it's probably a combination of both.
Yeah, definitely. And would you say that other companies, other blockchains, is there something they can learn from QRL? Can they try and implement some of the same strategies?
Well, as I was saying earlier, they can, but they kind of need. This is one of those things that really needs to be thought up ahead of time. For example, we're purpose built. Okay, mm-hmm. We were built for this. Coming in after the fact isn't changing the addressing scheme is fundamental to how the chain works. So, like, let's use Bitcoin for an example. How could you fix Bitcoin? Okay, you could possibly move over to Lamport signatures. You create a soft fork, right? And all of a sudden, Lamport signatures, you can start using post quantum secure signatures on Bitcoin. That's fine. And then that's assuming you can get everyone to agree on what the code looks like, right? And there's a lot. There's a lot of interest. There's a lot of developers in this space. If you can get the coordination, which would be unprecedented in blockchain, to make a change of this scale, right, to this many nodes, it's the number one, right? It has the most hashing power, the most nodes, the most everything. Let's just assume you could get everyone on the same page. Okay, now I switched over my Bitcoin wallet. Now I'm running Lamport signatures and I'm talking to a Bitcoin node. What about all the other addresses that exist? What about Satoshi's addresses? Mm-hmm. Those publics are still on the chain. What about people that don't get the memo? Okay, code is law, right? If code is law, we ported, you didn't follow, what it'd be just, I just don't see how it work. And having been done, having a project project management and enterprise architect background, I know how essentially 50% of projects fail, 70%, usually go over budget. And these are on centralized projects. Things happen that are unexpected, right? Even if you're doing your best to follow ITIL standards, and even good companies screw up projects. Something this big, you can't really screw it. Do we want a Bitcoin Cash 2? What would happen? There's just too there's so much variability, and there's so much work that it would take, and there's lost at the end of the day. No matter what, how much of Bitcoin is real? How much is lost?
I think 20% of Bitcoin is lost, and that's a lot of coins. Some of that's yours, yeah. Old hard drives, yeah.
There's just no. You'd literally have to get everyone coordinated, all developers on, to agree. So you didn't end up with too many X amount of hard fork chains. Get everyone to agree. Then there'd have to be a cutoff date. At this point, if you haven't migrated, if you haven't typed your information in and sent it, if you haven't sent into your new signature, then everything else probably just gets burnt, gets forked off into something else, and then gets stolen. I don't know. And let's say there was a quantum threat before then. This isn't that if you want quantum information secure, let's say you want it secure 10 to 15 years from now, you have to quantum secure it now. Okay?
Yes.
Because if you have an encrypted file that's not quantum secure now, all someone has to do is hold on to that theoretically for 10, 15 years and decrypt it later. And if this is sensitive information, you need to start thinking about this now. That's why NAST started this whole thing years ago. Now, at the end of the day, I'm a quantum optimist. I'm a little bit biased. All right. I'm a technology optimist, and I do my best to connect the dots, and I'm connecting the dots, and everything just feels, because no one knows for sure, but everything just feels like this is where everything's headed. It seems organic. It feels organic. It feels natural because it is nature, right?
Yeah, I'm an optimist the same way with this field. Definitely. I think it's coming, and I don't know how they fix this problem. The lost coins are a major problem. I keep scratching my head about that one. What do? You just admit that they're gone forever? Some people probably want a quantum computer in hopes of reclaiming the lost coins and then staying quiet. I don't know. I always think of Satoshi's coins as like a canary there. You know, if those start moving, what's going on? Something pretty weird. That might cause panic too.
If Satoshi's coin, someone could call, cry quantum.
Yep.
If his moved, and that's a viable narrative, right there. Yep. Definitely, and I could see that, and this is why the project was put together. We're not saying we're better than Bitcoin. We're not saying we're better than Ethereum. What we want to do is provide people an option in order to, if you're looking at the quantum threat, and you ask yourself this question, let's say there's a 1% chance, a 2% chance, a 3% chance, and you've got your digital asset portfolio. To me, it makes sense to hedge some of that in the direction based on how severe, what you perceive the risk to actually be. To me, that's just logical, but others may disagree.
Yeah, so I really do think that something's going to have to be done. I feel like Ethereum will probably get there before Bitcoin. Just because of the way, I don't know, just Vitalik's like energy with that project. He's always kind of thinking a few steps ahead, and I have a feeling they might be able to do this somehow before Bitcoin could.
So how long has Ethereum 2.0 been in the works?
Yeah, I know. And I mean, he's trying to do some serious stuff there, right? Like Bitcoin is killing the earth in a sense, right? It's so much power, so much power required to get that to work. And Ethereum 2.0
or something.
Ethereum 2.0 would allow us to have proof of stake instead of proof of work, which would be a lot more efficient. And sharding too, that whole idea of not having to do everything, just little pieces. That's more efficient too, kind of like BitTorrent. So those are good models. I just wonder if there's going to be an Ethereum 2.5 that contains something a little more post quantum. I guess we'll see.
But I think if by then the network will be more complex. There will be more nodes and more developers to coordinate with. Is that an advantage or disadvantage? This is why if you really want to be quantum secure, I feel the only guaranteed path to success is to be purpose built. Mm-hmm. Everything else results in an increasing risk over time as systems get bigger. And it's just like a regular IT system as a network, as a computer network evolves. Things just get larger and more difficult to manage, and you have to hire more and more people. The problem gets larger. You build it, look at it from a simple process perspective, where it's easy to argue that $1 spent up front is worth $10 down the road if you can just keep a process. And I'm talking about the process, just lean manufacturing, whatever. Depending on your audience's background, which are probably process based, I think they'll understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. So, there you have it, guys. I'm not an investment advisor, but we might be talking about the last crypto coin that's going to be left standing. This might be it. It's possible that the others will fold one day. So yeah, I'd like to thank you for coming on and sharing all these insights with us. And we'll see what happens in this post-quantum world as far as the collapse of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, sounds good. For your listeners, if they want to know more information, we're at www.theqrl.org. And we also have a passionate Discord community. And if you're looking for more information as far as the white paper and technical information, docs.theqrl.org.
Great. Yeah, it's really interesting reading, so you guys should check it out. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
That does it for this episode. Thanks again to Michael Strike for joining today to discuss the QRL. And thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to Protiviti's The Post-Quantum World and maybe leave a review to help others find us. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Constant Hacker. That's Constant with a K, Hacker. You'll find links there to what we're doing in quantum computing services at Protiviti. You can also find information on our quantum services at www.protiviti.com or follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. Until next time, be kind and stay quantum curious.